What's going on, everybody? Alright, we're on part 3 of our tutorials. If you found this one independently, I'm doing a series on all the basic case mods you can do with the original Xbox console. This part is about changing the LED colors on your power button. If you are not sure how to get to where I'm at, there are a lot of tutorials that will show you both how to open the console as well as getting it to this point where the board is out. So if you need that, you can go look elsewhere for now and then come back here later. I'm not going to do all that because there's just not enough video space to add all that. So as you can see, we've already got the power board here. Just a little background info. These do look different. There's different styles, there's different looks, even different brands. They are all wired the same. It's not going to matter what version of console, doesn't matter what motherboard version you have. This is universal and will work for all consoles on the original Xbox. Alright, so things you're going to need obviously is your power board. As you can see right here, I got my soldering iron. You need 2 LEDs. Now I'm going to go over that in a little bit. These are 5mm LEDs. However, the original LEDs on this board are 3mm. And I will go through why that is in a minute. Next, I've got some solder. A little small pair of pliers will make it easier to pull the old LEDs out when we remove them. I've also got some soldering wick. Some desoldering wick, I should say. That helps as well with the desoldering process. Otherwise, that's basically all you're going to need. Now, before we start, I'm using 5mm LEDs. The reason for that is you can put 2 different colors here. These LEDs are actually tri-color LEDs, the original ones on the board. The way it works is that there's actually 2 colors that this LED can produce, and it can also power both colors at the same time, which will combine to make another color. So of course green is the original color, and then red is the second color, which does get used in one instance, and then if they are both powered at the same time, it will look orange on the console. So now they do make these. You can get tricolor LEDs. They're a little bit higher priced, a little bit less practical, which is why I'm not going to use them. Additionally, if you wanted to use 2 colors, you would need 4 total LEDs. You would need 2 LEDs that are going to be your main color that replaces the green, and then you would need 2 for your secondary color that replaces the error light. If you decide to go with 2 colors, definitely get 3mm because you cannot fit 2 5mm LEDs on each side. There's just not enough room. That's why I'm using 5, is because I'm only going to be putting 1 color in here. And I will show you, just go over quickly how you can do 2 colors, because it's basically the same thing. And since I don't really care about that secondary color, I'm not going to worry about it, and I'm not going to waste time on the video doing that extra stuff. Alright, so first thing we got to do is we're going to flip this bad boy over and we're going to desolder it. My soldering iron is nice and hot already. Actually, let me trim down my soldering braid here. It's already got a little bit of used part. And then let me get my solder. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of solder on here. It's going to make it a little bit easier. For desoldering, I use a lower melting temperature solder. That way you can mix it in with the factory solder, and it'll make it easier to get this thing out of here. It's honestly probably going to be your hardest part. Alright, now I got some solder on there. Now, at this point, we could use the soldering wick. And what you would do is you would just put the soldering wick in between the soldering iron and the solder, and it'll start to remove the solder. But I am actually going to just pull it So what we're going to do is I'm going to take my little pliers and, oh, I forgot to tell you to do something. Silly me. These LEDs on the top, you have to bend them back up straight. It's not going to be perfect. They're still going to be like a little bit bent, but you do have to get them going straight up, especially for my method, the way I'm going to desolder them. So essentially all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to superheat all three contacts at the same time, and I'm going to use my pliers at the bottom that are going to hold the LED, and they're just going to gently wiggle it out as I'm heating it at the same time. Kind of saves me a desoldering step. But if you're not a good solderer, I would absolutely recommend just using the solder braid just to be safe. Alright, as you can see, got that one out already. Now, I am going to use the solder braid to take some of this other solder off of here. Because that's going to make it easier for when we install the new LED, I should say. Okay. Now I'm just going to do the same thing on the other LED. Got my pliers underneath, and make sure you don't accidentally melt something that you shouldn't, of course. See if I can do this without adding any solder. I probably won't. No. Go ahead and just add some more solder. Okay. Get that out of the way so I don't accidentally burn it. Alright, and I'm just going to heat it and slowly wiggle my plier out, and boom, it came out just like that. Get my desoldering braid back out and see if I can get a little bit of this extra stuff off. The more you get out of these holes now, the easier it's going to be for you to install the new LED. And if you're lucky enough to get all of it out, it'll be the easiest thing you've ever done. All right, so we got that out. Now, just for a good rule of thumb, put it in front of you just like this. That's the way it is inside the console if you were looking at it. That way we can keep the contacts straight and you don't get them mixed up, because that's how I'm going to be showing you how to do this. Now hopefully this doesn't go out of focus. If it does, I'm very sorry, but this camera is not, it's not very good at autofocus. Okay, so this is where one of the LEDs are, okay? And there's 3 holes, and this is how it works. The top hole on this side, now on this side it's different, so don't do it for both sides, but on this side, which is going to be your left side while you're looking at it, the top hole is the positive for the green, so the main color positive is on top. The bottom hole is the secondary color, so if you've got 2 colors, you put the positive for your main running color on top hole, you put your positive for your secondary error code light on the bottom hole, and then the middle hole is a shared negative or ground wire hole. You would have to put, if you're putting 2 LED colors, you'd have to put both negatives through that same hole. In this case, I'm just doing the one, as I said earlier. Get this in focus a little bit better. My AC just kicked in. I hope you can't hear that too bad. Alright, so if you don't know, these little LEDs, one leg is usually a little bit longer, and that means that the longer leg is your positive side. So I'm just going to get these started in here just like this. If you desoldered enough solder out, you should be able to at least get them started without too much problem. And then we're going to lift this up some to get some better access to it. Alright, now what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be heating up the bottom areas, and that was pretty easy actually, a lot easier than I thought. That went right through. Now don't put it too far because we still need to take this LED and bend it back over, so don't put it right up against the board. In fact, I'll probably put a little bit there. I'd say leave maybe like an eighth to maybe even a quarter of an inch. A quarter of an inch would probably be too much between the board and the bottom of the LED. Alright, now that's all we're going to do for now. Once we get the LED set, we're going to flip it back over and we're going to actually solder it in there correctly. But it's always easier to get them started. Now, as I said, on the other side, the 3 holes on the other side are actually reversed. So the main color on this side, the positive needs to go on the bottom hole, and the secondary error code color, the positive needs to go on the top hole, which is the opposite of what we just did. But the middle is still the shared negative or ground wire hole. Alright, so we're just going to get this in here just like this, get it started, and then I'm going to flip this up again. All I'm doing is I'm just heating up the bottom contacts and I'm lightly pushing down. You really don't even need to push that hard. Once you get that solder heated up, it'll go through just like that. Now I'm trying to show you the bottom side on this one, so if it was a little bit off there, sorry about that. Alright, now we're going to take the board out and we're going to flip it. There should be enough solder in there to where they won't just fall out. I mean, if you removed all the solder when you took out the old ones, then yeah, they might fall out when you flip it up. Alright, so all we're going to do now, pretty simple stuff. Let me get this out of the way. We're just going to solder in the contacts. Just throw some solder. You don't need a whole lot, just enough. Well, this one ain't wanting to stick this time, is it? There we go. Alright, that's one side. Now if you put a lot of solder in there and it's too much, that could still be okay. Now this just fell out a little bit. And if you do, you can cut some of the solder off. It's not too big of a deal. There we go again. This one's having a trouble with slipping out, which I guess means I've took quite a bit of the solder off. There we go. Now, one other thing to double check is make sure, these holes are very close. Make sure that the connections are not bridged, which means the connections are both together. Instead of being separate, you accidentally put too much solder to join them, because obviously that means that the whole thing's going to be messed up. Alright, now we're just going to check the height of our LEDs, make sure they didn't slip too much, and that's not too bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and bend it. Just bend it on down just like that. Bend it on. Now see, that one I didn't put it down enough, so let's redo that. Especially when you're using 5mm LEDs, you definitely want to make sure that it's bent down pretty good, because those are much bigger. And that should be good there. Let's do a quick check and try to bend it again. There we go. perfectly bent over. Now, we're just going to take some cutters. If you have some really good scissors, I mean, you could use those, but I use these they're kind of like little snips. These are perfect for this. You can cut it down as far as you want. I cut as much of this off as possible. Like I said, if you can see my solder joints, it's probably too blurry though. Those are a little bit too big, so I'm going to actually chop off some of the actual solder too and just cut it off. It's not a big deal if you do that, as long as you don't cut it down to the board. Alright, now same thing here. Just get most. Now that one's way too big. Definitely gotta take some of that. You just always want to be careful, because if there's too much and there's not enough clearance, this thing won't fit in the board right, and then you'll end up, what'll end up happening is you'll try to force it in there when you install it back inside the console, and then you probably will end up either putting too much flex on the board going back and forth and maybe even snapping a trace, or you'll just end up breaking part of the LED part off just because it was what was sticking out too far. Alright, so that should be it. I'll come back in a minute and plug it in and we'll make sure it works, and that should be it for this tutorial. Then in the last part of the tutorial, we're going to take everything we did from part 1 and 2 and we're going to install it, and part 3, this part, and we're going to put it all together and install it in the console, and bada bing bada boom, we're done. Alright guys, I'll be right back with the tester. Alright, so as you can see, I've got a console here, ta-da, and this is actually a totally different console than the one we're working with in this 4-part tutorial, but I really just wanted to get one so I could plug in. This is the board that we modded, and before I power it up, I will say that if you'd used, oh, oops, accidentally started to press the button. If you did a 2-color system, a good way to test it is you can just plug it all up and then turn your console on to check the main color, the running color. But a good way to check the secondary color is, now I have heard there are some consoles for some reason that do not, but I would say 97% of the time it's supposed to give you an error code light if you do not have the AV cable plugged in while it's powered. It's kind of up for debate sometimes about why some consoles don't, but if you want to test that second color, if you chose to do it, that's a good way to test it. Just unplug your AV cable and then power it on. Alright, so we're going to push the power button here. Ta-da! As you can see, all working pretty well. Looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and just turn it back off. Now, if this looked too difficult, you can check the description in the video. I do offer these kits for sale. And it's basically just, these are pre-made, and there's quite a few different colors to choose from as well. Pink, purple, which is really just UV, yellow, white, red, orange, you name it. So just check the link in the description to our website, and you can order these little puppies and not have to deal with all this extra work. So anyways guys, that's it. Part 4 is coming up next, which is where we're just going to assemble everything we've done in the first 3 parts. So I hope to see you back for that. Till next time guys.